So, you want to start writing a book, but you're not sure what the story should even entail, or what genre it should even be. In some senses, when people say they want to write a book, they have absolutely no idea what they want to do. So, this begs the question: should you follow the trends? To be honest, I can't really tell you whether or not you should or should not, because it's up to every author themselves to decide whether or not they should follow a trend in terms of writing. It also really depends on what you mean by a trend. If you mean trends in the news, for example, being back a few years ago, the whole trend of the Me Too movement starting, then I don't know, maybe you should do that. Maybe you could shine a light on it if you want to. It's kind of what I do. I try to look at current events in terms of when I write a story and add implements of it into my stories to make them more realistic and more believable. But I wouldn't say you should do this. I should say you can if you want to. But if you want to keep it completely separate from our world, then you can. There's nothing against doing that. Escapism is a very, very in thing, and always has been, in terms of writing and in terms of stories, for very good reason. But in terms of trends of, like, genre trends, like the whole idea that young adult books should have some implementation of vampires and things like that, I'd say you could follow them if you wanted to. If you really want your books to sell, and I don't really want to make it sound like I'm skeptical here, because I mean I am an author myself, but I don't really sell that many copies because I don't really follow trends. But if you really want them to sell, and that's one of the main motives behind you writing, then I'd say, yeah, follow trends. Keep them, but try to do something new with it. Don't just write like Twilight Rebooted or something, because at the end of the day, following trends is a very dangerous game, I'd find, because it means that you have to bring something to the table that hasn't been brought before in order for people to be interested. Because if you go like, my book is basically Twilight, people are going to be like, why would I read that? I could just read Twilight. And Jules is probably not as well acclaimed, so why should I bother? But in a lot of senses, if you add like a new element to it, or if you change something about the structure and you still use something that's very popular, like vampires for instance, or like any undead characters, like what I've done myself with the last book I published, Buried. It is a vampire story, and I did originally plan for it to be a vampire story. I didn't necessarily take trends into account, not consciously at least. Maybe in my subconscious I decided that I should have done, because maybe I just thought, hey, this will sell, this will be interesting. But I brought my own spin to it. I made it not just about vampires. I made it about all undead, all the main types of undead really, and some like made up creatures of my own, because I didn't necessarily want it to just be about vampires or about things that people have already read before. But yeah, in terms of whether or not trends should come into account, I'd say you should probably do at least a little bit of research on what genre you're writing in and what types of stories are selling currently at the current point in time. I mean, obviously it depends on how long it takes for you to write. If it'll take you longer than the length of an average trend, like if you're planning on writing an epic of over 100,000 words, then probably don't take those into account, because it might take you literal decades to write. So, and by that point, there'll have been like hundreds of trends that have come and gone at that point in the genre. But if you're writing something smaller, say a novella, a novelette, short story collection, then by all means, you can look at the trends and decide whether or not you want them to be implemented in your own story, just so long as you keep it as unique as you want it to be. But I don't want people, other authors, or just me in general even, to just decide, oh yeah, I have this story idea, but I don't really have anything else for it, so the concept is just this, and then look at trends, and then completely change the idea, or completely reconceptualize the idea to be something that I didn't originally plan, that borrows from a lot of things way too much. Like, there's nothing wrong with borrowing from other books and taking inspiration from other books, but there comes a point where it would stop being your own work and start to seem like you're just plagiarizing someone else. But and then you could possibly get sued by that author, or the people or if it's an author that's already dead, the people that own the copyright. But it really depends, I'd say. So my conclusion would be just to write your own stories, but if you'd like to, if a big reason behind you writing is to sell copies and to make money, then I would say that you should at least take a small look at the market trends, like what books have been selling this year, what type of books over the past 5 years, and just keep looking at it as you're writing, but don't get too obsessed with it. Okay, and now this is the portion of the video where I look at the opinions of other authors, of other authors in the writing community on Twitter, when I ask them and they give me their feedback. And at Bacon Dilettante says, in answer to the question of using whether or not you should take trends into account, replied, I mean, it's a yes and a no. Trends are just trends. There's no guarantees that the season will last until you finish your book. At the same time, though, if you want it to sell, you should be looking at what is selling and telling what it is that is drawing people to the genre. So, yeah. Kind of like what I said before, I definitely agree with that statement. So, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and right on.